finally had enough of Emma Watson, who was, super woke and, one of the useful idiots also on things like Gaza. And so, which tells you something that her views on Gaza were just as crazy, I think, as her views on, on the women thing.
Bill Maher has now turned his attention toward Emma Watson, the former Harry Potter star who openly criticized J.K. Rowling and aligned herself with woke activism. And when Maher confronts celebrities who drift into ideological extremes, he never pulls his punches. This time, his critique was sharp, fearless, and layered with humor that cut directly to the heart of the controversy. What began as celebrity disagreement quickly transformed into a much larger cultural confrontation about influence, truth, and accountability. Maher's commentary was not just entertaining, it was revealing. It exposed the growing tension between celebrity activism and real-world consequences. So buckle up, because this Emma Watson roast is about more than one actress. It reflects the deeper conflict shaping modern culture itself.
Of Emma Watson, who was, super woke and, one of the useful idiots also on things like Gaza. And so, which tells you something that her views on Gaza were just as crazy, I think, as her views on, on the women thing. And, J.K. Rowling was just unmerciful. She was like, well, this is not an issue for you because when you go into a public bathroom, you have a bodyguard who stands outside the door, And she talked about how, when I was your age, I didn't have all this privilege that you're always so hateful. I was home working on the book that made you a star. It was, she just wasn't having it anymore.
Yeah. You do get to a point where, and I think on a lot of issues, I'm at that point where you're just sick of the BS on both.
For anyone who missed J.K. Rowling's explosive response to Emma Watson, Bill Maher delivered the recap that instantly captured public attention. After years of persistent criticism from Watson, Rowling finally broke her silence and responded without hesitation or apology. Her words were bold, unapologetic, and sparked debate across the internet within hours. But Maher did not simply repeat Rowling's message, he elevated it with sharp analysis and biting humor. He turned a celebrity clash into a lesson about free speech and ideological pressure. Through sarcasm and disbelief, Maher showed how cultural disagreements have become public battlegrounds where reputations and ideas collide. What seemed like gossip became a mirror reflecting society's obsession with moral purity and political identity.
Orthodox
ideology, that they think that makes them a better person, to be so counterintuitive about all these issues like this, that this makes them the good people, that they're way out ahead on this issue, and you're not, and it's not what people want, and it goes against human nature, and it's not helping. You want to champion women, and you didn't. You did the opposite.
I know, because there's the hierarchy.
You made them uncomfortable,
no,
and
100%,
unnecessarily,
100%. Look,
in many ways.
Bill Maher did not hold back when examining Emma Watson's image as a moral crusader. He pointed out that Watson views herself as someone fighting for justice and standing on the right side of history. However, Maher argued that the reality is far more complicated than this self-portrait. Many of the causes she supports, while emotionally appealing, often ignore long-term consequences. Good intentions, he warned, do not automatically create good outcomes, especially when policies affect women and vulnerable groups. By combining humor with uncomfortable truths, Maher forced audiences to confront a deeper question: are these movements truly helping society, or simply reshaping it through fear of dissent? In the end, his criticism was not just about Watson but about the ideology she represents.
Transgender people, I do not want to treat them like the others. I want them to have rights. I want them to be treated with dignity and respect.
Exactly.
At the same time, I also know what it's like to be a woman living in a state where we've decided self-ID makes the most sense. Okay, well, self-ID doesn't make the most sense.
No.
Because obviously, as you and I both know, there are all sorts of predators out there who are going to take advantage of that situation, and that's already happened, right? So there was that big We Spa story, and it turned out that the so-called transgender woman who was allowed into the women's locker room at a Korean spa in downtown LA was not actually a transgender person, was a person who had a long record of, sexual exploitation and assault or whatever.
This is where the debate becomes impossible to avoid. There is no question that transgender individuals deserve dignity, respect, and protection under the law. Yet many argue that fairness and safety must also be preserved in specific spaces, particularly women's sports and women-only environments. This discussion is not about denying rights but about acknowledging biological and social realities at the same time. Ignoring these concerns does not create equality, it creates new forms of injustice. True progress requires balance rather than silence. Society must be mature enough to hold two truths at once, compassion and fairness. Avoiding this conversation only deepens confusion and division.
I felt so bad because I bought the cover story when it was first reported, but I was wrong to buy it. I should have asked more questions. And that poor woman, she happened to be a black woman who was complaining at the front desk of We Spa, she was dragged through the mud when in reality, she witnessed this person fondling themselves in the women's locker room. Now, this person is not transgender. This is not an indictment of transgender people. It's an indictment of a policy that was not thought through. And as a result, there are women who are going to suffer. And as a result, there are transgender people who are going to suffer because people are going to make the mistake of thinking, oh, well, that guy was transgender and this is how they behave. No, this is not how they behave. We need to be smarter about these policies.
Supporting an ideology without examining its real-world impact can lead to serious unintended consequences. Public figures such as Emma Watson and Ana Kasparian hold enormous influence over millions of people, and with that influence comes responsibility. It is not enough to promote causes emotionally, they must also be questioned honestly. Bill Maher often reminds audiences that every movement has a cover story that sounds perfect on the surface. But truth is rarely found in slogans or headlines alone. Different media outlets present different versions of reality, leaving out facts that challenge their narrative. When people consume only one side, they stop searching for the full picture. And without the full picture, society slowly drifts away from truth.
Well, good for you for saying that. I say it all the time. It's no shame to say, oh, I believe the cover story.
Yeah, I do.
Because the cover story just means that everybody has their own narrative. Nobody pursues the truth on either side. You have to work really hard.
Yes.
But since it's my job, I do, to get the full story. Nobody ever prints if you read the New York Times and the New York Post, it's like these two, it's just funny to do it. Because it's like, oh, I see what you left out.
This exposes the deeper crisis within modern American media, extreme politicization. The moment a story breaks, it is filtered through partisan lenses instead of being reported objectively. Facts that challenge preferred narratives are ignored or minimized. Instead of informing the public, many outlets compete to satisfy emotional loyalty and ideological alignment. The result is confusion, mistrust, and constant outrage. Every event becomes a political weapon rather than a source of understanding. Journalism loses its role as a neutral messenger and becomes an amplifier of division. In such an environment, truth becomes the first casualty.
J.K. Rowling used to be a villain to the right because she wrote books about witchcraft. Now she's a villain to the left because she has the crazy belief that there's more to being a woman than pronouns and lipstick. So that was the point of the evening. How do we take a stand against cancel culture? And I suggested, since we were mostly all in show business, that we start an award show to honor the brave people who have fought back.
J.K. Rowling emerged from this cultural storm as a rare figure of resistance. At a time when celebrities rushed to apologize and retreat, Rowling refused to surrender her beliefs. She endured attacks from activists, media organizations, and even actors who built their careers from her work. Emma Watson's criticism symbolized a painful betrayal from someone Rowling once supported. Yet Rowling stood firm, choosing honesty over popularity. That level of courage is uncommon in modern celebrity culture. Whether one agrees with her or not, she demonstrated strength of conviction. In today's climate, standing your ground has become an act of rebellion.
This month, students there demanded trigger warnings before all the lectures in case any of the adult subjects you specifically went to college to learn about came up. And Martha said, yeah, no, we're not doing that. She didn't cave in. or hire a new dean of sensitivity. She just said, no, college is for introducing you to new ideas, not for kissing your ass and making you feel wonderful and always right.
Rowling's defiance inspired others to challenge ideological pressure in their own institutions. One powerful example came from Martha Pollack, the president of Cornell University. When activists demanded trigger warnings for adult and controversial topics, she refused. She reminded students that they were adults capable of confronting difficult ideas. Her argument was simple: education exists to challenge minds, not to protect them from discomfort. Shielding students from difficult subjects weakens intellectual growth. Pollack's stand defended academic freedom and the very purpose of higher education. Her courage echoed Rowling's message that institutions can still stand on principle even in charged cultural climates.
I'm just amazed at how this generation can simultaneously be too sensitive for anything distasteful and somehow also so into eating ass. So Cornell, I present you with these balls. I sure could have used them when I was there.
The core flaw of woke culture lies in its double standards. It presents itself as morally superior while often violating the very principles it claims to uphold. It condemns certain actions but excuses worse behavior within its own ranks. This hypocrisy erodes trust and damages credibility. Virtue signaling replaces accountability, and outrage replaces thoughtful discussion. People are punished more harshly for disagreement than for genuine misconduct. Society becomes trapped in fear instead of fairness. Over time, observers grow skeptical of a movement that values performance over principle.
Dozens of Netflix employees walked out over Dave Chappelle's reckless decision to perform comedy on his comedy special. CEO Ted Sarandos could have pulled the special and replaced it with more episodes of Who Wants to Watch Koreans Get Killed. But instead, he reminded his Netflix employees that comedy exists to push boundaries and told them if you'd find it hard to support our content breadth, Netflix may not be the best place for you.
In the end, this conflict reveals a deeper truth about modern society. We are standing at a crossroads between genuine moral responsibility and performative virtue. Standing for principles when they are unpopular requires courage. J.K. Rowling and Martha Pollack demonstrated that courage through their actions. Meanwhile, the contradictions of woke culture remind us that not all outrage leads to justice. True advocacy must be balanced, honest, and grounded in reality. A culture built on integrity will always outlast one built on fear and conformity. The question now is simple: will society choose truth or applause?